Good morning and happy Thursday, Revealing Truth Ministries. Welcome to the Deeper Dive. As you can see, we're live with the panel of some awesome fathers, awesome men are with us today in the building. And as always, the livest live audience is also in the building with us. And we want to welcome you to the stream. Drop something in the chat. Let us know that you're there. We appreciate the time that we get to spend together. The Deeper Dive gives us the opportunity to attend to the things that God has said to us. We've determined to be people who are most blessed. And it feels good to be on a Thursday and we still got Father's Day vibes, right?
Come on, man.
Like it didn't die on Sunday. We still live in it, right?
For 2 hours, right?
Hey, we'll take it though. We'll take it. We appreciate it. You know, it's awesome being up here with you all. I don't know how many collective years of parenting represented right now in this panel. We said we got 11 kids between the four of us.
Yes, sir.
At varying ages. Yeah. And so we get to look back at Sunday, but have that conversation today. Yeah. And one of the points that I reflect on from Sunday just had me thinking about how, leadership is dynamic. Yeah. There are different phases, different seasons, different feels of it. Sometimes it's easier than others. Mm-hmm. When it comes to leading family, right, it's always having to navigate through the emotions and things that are connected to the relationships of the people that you have. Yeah. And sometimes it could seem like you're working uphill as you try to communicate the details to a picture that you have in your mind that you believe, I think God said this to me. Right. And you're having to speak that into sometimes an environment or a reality that not sometimes, but always doesn't match what you're saying, sure. Right? Correct. But you got to forge ahead and say it anyway and do it anyway, right? Yeah. So let's talk about just the mindset or the posture that dad has to put himself in order to still communicate that message, even though this situation may be what it is, right? Mm. Whoever wants to start, jump off.
I could jump in there, right? And I think something that we all hear people say a lot, like they grow up fast. Right, they grow up fast, right. And what that means to me or speaks to me is like, it's the thought is we have all this time. Mm-hmm. And so I think what makes it uphill or make it even feel uphill is the fact that in reality, although 18 years may have passed, there wasn't like 18 years of daily opportunities to actually lead. Yeah. And so it's like within those years, you get select opportunities to actually lead. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it uphill because the amount of opportunities to actually impart aren't as numerous as it may seem like on the surface, And so it's like, hey, I have 365 days out of a year, and people know I'll be thinking this way, which I can tell people this is a little different. But if we were to do the math, right, it's like there's 365 days in a year. Yeah. How many of those days do you actually get to impart directional leadership, of the 365? Mm-hmm. If you were to look over last year with your child, how many opportunities did you get? And I would say there's a difference in between proactive versus reactive. Right. I would say probably 70% of your leading was reactive. Mm-hmm. Something happened and you responded. Mm-hmm. Well, I would say those opportunities don't even really count. Yeah. I'm talking about the proactive moments. Sure. Right. Like how many proactive times did you really get a chance to have a conversation about where we're going as a family, what you need to be seeing and doing as a family? Like 365 days, not to make anybody feel bad, but I doubt 10% of them days, right? Probably 30 times. That's like 30 times would be extreme.
That's a good number.
Like 30 times would mean 3 times a month. I sat down, not in a reactive time, but in a proactive moment and brought direction to my family. 3 times a month. Mm-hmm. I don't know who's doing that, right?
Right. That would be pretty good.
But that would be exceptional if you did that. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is that's literally 10%. Right. So 10% of the days, if you were killing it, doing it 3 times a month, 10% is that like so. they live 90% more of life.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I'm saying is, I believe that that's what gives the feeling of uphill. Is the actual amount of times I get to impart aren't as large or as numerous as they may seem, and to the point of Sunday's message, right? You're really outnumbered. Like you're outnumbered when it comes to the amount of time you get to spend, right? You know, like just take any given day, you know, Amber's spending more time in front of her school teachers than she's spending in front of us. And so, man, we try to do our best to make sure that the school teacher understands her values and understands, like, this is Amber, this is what's going on, remain communicating with her. And that's only because, man, she's spending more time in front of this lady than she's spending in front of us every day.
Right. You got school, and then you have...
She's actually a very phenomenal teacher.
Yeah.
You know, it made it seem like...
She's a team. She's on the team. She's on
the team, right? Yeah. You know,
Yeah, you got school, then you have after school, then you have family, extended family time, friend time, all these things that are happening.
All these things that, like, you know, that's what I believe can make you feel uphill, is the fact of the matter is you don't have as many times as you think you have to impart what I call directional leadership, which is proactively speaking into a future.
Yeah. And so just taking it from there, when you talk about being proactive, I'm going to say this to maybe set like where we go from here in this conversation and the time that we have. But when you talk about being proactive, the way that I'm seeing it is like, you know, cooking, baking a cake or cooking in the kitchen. You do like you do your prep. You're doing your prep because of what's next. Like everything builds on the last thing. And so when I hear you talk about being proactive, and considering that you are outnumbered, like you're working with like 10% at most, at best, of this person's year.
And I'm giving percentages based on my one, right? Pastor Darius is 5. Greg has 3.
Right.
I'm doing it based on my one. I can imagine, like,
what this looks
like.
And
there was 5 of these jokers, and I'm like, man, I gotta provide directional leadership to all 5, and everybody's like, hey, you can't treat them the same. They all have the individual bit. What? That makes it feel. That's even more uphill. So I have to, you know, divide my hour I have after work amongst 5 kids to provide leadership in life.
Absolutely.
It's group
after work,
group work dynamics, group work,
and
group
ministry
lessons, dynamics.
After work, that's what I believe. That's what I'm saying. That's the uphill, like the literal, the actual. You know, of course, that's where I think. But I'm like, man, the actual time you have, many fathers are doing a much greater job than they're getting credit for when you actually look at the available time to lead. Sure. Right.
So how do we see this how do we take advantage and make gains?
I was, as Pastor B was speaking about that, it you know, it just kind of makes you have this great respect for the Almighty Father, right? And he's the only one that really has perfected this concept of proactive directional leadership, because even in our situations, right, we have different kids and they all coming at different ages. So even when you think you got a plan, bam, here is a shift, here is a whole different direction, and now you're having to you know, lead many times from a reactive standpoint, but you're leaning on a father who is so much active in his nature and has already kind of completed our story before the foundation of time. So it just makes you just really be like, God's the GOAT.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know. So
let's get to it.
He the GOAT.
I'm trying to also I want to make sure that we get to what I'm feeling we about to get to in the time that we have to get to it.
Get there.
So you've laid it out by God is an example.
Right.
He started some stuff before we got here.
Facts.
And everything, like there's layers to it that give us an advantage.
Yeah.
So let's go. Shortcut what Pastor Darius is saying is like the best thing you can do is give your child a relationship with God. Right? Like that is I'm sorry, Greg, 2 inches I violated. That is the best thing you can do is to drop them off Sunday at the children's ministry. And
come on, let's go.
Make sure the
use what you got.
That's right.
Be resourceful.
You're gonna have to You're gonna have to.
Yeah.
Like, I think the most important, and we're gonna talk about this in the Family Matters series.
Sure.
I think, and that's why I'm like, man, like what God just the most important legacy we could leave our family is a spiritual legacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And like knowing that ultimately, if I leave you in God's hands, I left you in the best hands. Because and that's the point. I know I say a lot of these things, but I say a lot of these things so that we can live in context of our need for God.
Yeah.
Like you don't have the time
Absolutely.
to do what culture is putting on your back.
Yeah.
Right.
So take that weight off your back.
Right.
Like take the weight off your back. You like take it off your back and realize the only way this thing is going to happen is if I prioritize God in my family.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, I was just telling Amber this morning because she's been in and out of the hospital more times than normal for a little kid. And so, but the first time it happened during COVID, and I think that's what kind of got her because during that time you weren't allowed, only one parent can go in, so just Rashida.
Yeah.
And so now I have to constantly tell her, like, you know, because she just had the surgery, like, if something's bothering you, I want you to understand. The first thing is not going to be you go to the hospital. The first thing is going to be me pray with you.
Right. Right.
Well, that's proactive.
Right. Absolutely.
If you're hurt, tell me because I'll pray with you.
Right.
But that's also just laying a spiritual framework.
Yep.
Because the best thing I can give you, girl, is a relationship with God. You know, that's one of the things I look back over, like, man, when it came to my parents. And I said one thing, which when my father passed away, and hold all this in context because my mom's still here, which is just a whole nother conversation. But, you know, when my father passed away, I said the one thing I never felt was lost because he always told me where we belonged.
Right.
And like that is irreplaceable. And I think that's the part that we have to realize, like, especially now in information age where you're getting even less and less time, less and less critical conversation. Man, Greg, say something. I'm not trying to talk the whole episode, but you're getting
I mean, you rolling.
jump in anytime you want to. Like,
Well, I'll jump in there then.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
I think it's important. You know, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to beat yourself up over being reactive, right?
Sure.
Because your children are people, and their lives are being influenced by any and everything that they are ingesting. And it's not, you know, I hear that phrase, well, you know, I won't send them to school, right? Or I'll just do this at home, or I'll just whatever random thing you come up with. But the truth of the matter is they're going to live in a world.
Right.
And in this world,
well, let me insert right there, right?
Go.
Yeah.
So 2 layers, right? You have proactive leadership, then you
Right.
have reactive leadership.
Leadership. Yeah.
Right. So most society puts pressure on proactive, right?
Yeah.
Reactive is still good.
Yeah.
That's what we talked about on Tuesday because you just touched the point. Reactive leadership isn't about me trying to make directional leadership happen.
Right.
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 You're having to react. You can't direct during a reactional situation
Correct.
because you're going to sound crazy.
Yeah.
However, reactive leadership is important because it's about shaping worldview.
Right.
So it's like in reactive moments as a leader in a household, I need to think I'm not trying to instill our principles.
Right.
I'm trying to shape a right worldview.
Correct.
Something happened out there.
Sure. Yeah.
You're reacting.
Yeah.
Now I need to make sure that you're reacting with the proper balance of the world.
Yeah.
100%.
Which I would say, to your point, is
Yeah.
what happens is as a negative. People got to see when you remove your kids from a world environment, homeschool
100%.
them.
Yeah.
They don't know. They haven't shaped the world view yet.
Absolutely.
Correct.
So you've got principles in them, but
Sure.
their principles haven't been able
They
to
haven't
go
been
up
tried.
against
They haven't been
a
tested.
worldview.
Sure.
And eventually
Yeah.
they're going to have that moment.
Right.
And so you need to know how to navigate that. If that's the choice you made, understand your kids have yet to have faced the hardest thing that's going to come against their
And
values.
here's the
set,
important
right?
part of that, right?
good. That's
They're going
good.
to be facing that at a time where you don't have the same amount of influence.
Right.
You better preach that point.
Come on now.
TikTok,
No, because it's critical,
Media
right?
and absolutely, bro.
At this
Yeah.
point,
Absolutely.
at children outside of adult age, you have the most impact that you're ever going to have in their lives.
Yeah.
Excuse me, without their own mind getting in the way. We'll
Sure.
say it that way, right?
Sure.
Because obviously my parents have great influence still in my life.
Right.
and that's because of a choice I made.
Yeah.
However, you're heavily a part of that as an adult. So here you are, when you have your younger children, you have a chance to impart for what's happening in the world.
Sure.
You may not like what's coming back all the time, but now we have a responsibility to impart now the principles, and we're bringing them back to this place that we live in faith. I mean, I heard somebody say it this way one time, we should raise our children by grace so that they'll understand who God is when they have that the time to get in front of him for themselves. Right. And I'm going, and I heard it. It was crazy when I heard it because I thought, can't nobody raise their kids that way. Right. What I mean? You got to raise with discipline, the hard side, But then you step back and you realize, what does that really mean? Yeah. It means that I'm going to example who God is in how I engage. Now, I'm not going to be perfect because I'm not God, but I'm going to do my best to show. And then when I make mistakes, as my dad would say all the time, you apologize, right? Apology is big. You got to be able to go back and say, I messed that one up. Right. Here's where we're moving forward now. Absolutely. Understanding that all of these things are seeds. Yeah. They're all going to grow at some rate. I ain't worried about the seed that's been sown. I'm worried about the watering that I choose to do next. Because, again, your children they're people. Right. And their lives are being influenced by, I love the statement of your community, right? It's not just teachers, coaches. Yeah. I mean, it's family members, it's friends, it's social media, it's cartoon. I mean, my youngest 5-year-old son, for whatever reason, has all of a sudden become scared of everything. Why? I have no idea. Went to his grandmother's house the other day. Just there's things here. What things? We were good. We were just here Sunday. No things. It's Tuesday. Things. Right. Yeah. I don't know how we got there, right?
But something that is, man, to marry what you guys are saying as brothers. Y'all got the Pope brother mojo going on right now. But it's beautiful because Pastor Brian mentioned that one of the greatest gifts you can give your children is a relationship with God. I'd even argue to say maybe one of the second best things that you can give them is your own personal relationship with God. Yeah. Because as you're leading and you're responding and shaping their worldviews, that has to come from a biblical foundation. Yeah. It is important that fathers are saved, as my mom would say, sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost.
Come on now, get it down deep inside.
Like you have to have the Spirit of God on the inside of you so that you can shape the worldview in the way that reflects the way God sees the world. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that you can reactively direct or whatever the case may be, respond the way that God desires for you to respond and lead your family. Yeah. Otherwise, there's a way that seems right to a man.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I think it's progressively, and it had to do with my dad had a thing he used to say. Yeah. And I like to break it down. Sure. Then, when you break it down, it's like I can spread it further. Well, because it was true. Right. But what he used to say is he was like, listen, you don't preach to pastors. Yeah. You live in front of them and hope they catch them.
Yeah, that's good.
But he was saying it because of the information. Yeah. Like you don't want to get into an information war. Like if you're speaking to a pastor, it's like, I'll only hear what you're saying if you give me a depth of revelation I haven't yet tapped into. Like it can't be like basic instruction. You can't tell a pastor like, man, discipline is great. They're gonna be like, says who? Moses, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can't show me, if you can't articulate that discipline is great through the lens of Moses, then I didn't get it. I didn't get it. Wow. And so he's like, you don't get into these revelation battles with pastors because they have too much information. Yeah. I'm saying that to say, like, I believe that same perspective to what you're saying. Yeah. I believe that same perspective is now. It's not a perspective of age. It's a perspective of information. Yeah. Right. Like Absolutely. Once somebody has exposure to so much information that you can't give them more information and hope for change. Sure. Absolutely. Like you can just live a life in front of them and hope something is caught. Yeah. To your just point, catch it. Yeah. But I believe that's where we are just as fathers. Like you have to be saved, sanctified. Because the best thing you can give them is a holy example, and hope something gets caught. Because if you try to get into a information battle, or a revelation battle,
your 2-year-old gonna come back at you.
Your 2-year-old gonna get
listen.
Listen.
I got an example too. Yeah. So I was tucking Mackenzie in one night,
Yeah.
and she asked me. She says, "Daddy, where do the oceans come from? Where do the oceans come from?"
Nice.
And so this is what I did.
Nice.
But so what hasn't been said, but has been described in just this conversation is values and having value. Like I see values as the box or the basket that all of these things fit into.
Right.
So because we've laid down some values at our house, right? I went in for the conversation, and I did this. I pulled out. She had our Bibles on her bookshelf. Pulled out the Bible and started reading the creation story. And basically, I read the creation story and said, "Boom, that's where oceans came from."
Okay.
She says, I understand. Yeah, this is what she says to me. She says, I asked you where oceans came from, and you just told me God did it.
Right.
But that don't tell me where oceans came from.
Let's go, Mackenzie. Let's go, Mackenzie.
Mackenzie, right? But I was ready for that because I know my daughter, right? And so I said, listen, this is a source.
Yeah.
This is a source where we can get information from.
Yeah.
Right.
Kenzie says, there's a lot of sources.
Wow.
She
Wow.
said, there's a lot of sources.
That's fact.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. There are a lot of sources. Just dealing with, that's where we are today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sources. And I said, listen, if I wanted to know your name, who should I ask? Me. You ask
Come on
me.
now.
I said, that's right. That's how we do it. When we want information, we go to the source.
Yeah.
Now, that was the conversation for that night. I know this has to be continued on it.
Right.
But just working to keep
Yeah,
things
it's
within
good.
the values that we've established
Yes.
for our house.
This is- yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I would say even with that, right? You know, one of the things that I don't know, maybe we had one of these conversations with the men before. Where we sat down and we just were just talking about how to cast vision. You know, I know, and saying like, listen, let's just bring our minds together, bring our experiences together, and talk about what we've come against trying to cast vision, and together be smarter when it comes to casting vision, because we're what we're up against. And I could say for that conversation, right, one of the things that I just have a lot of in encounters with people who don't necessarily believe in God or believe in Christ, man, well, heavy questions. And I'm just going to give like a little piece of sometimes what I'll say to them that gets them to re-engage when it's like, oh man, there's lots of information, or man, there's lots of places where I can get the truth from. There's lots of sources. Like that's something that's said a lot. And so first thing, so when they come, they're like, man, you know, I know I'm talking to you, and they'll even say sometimes, like, I know I'm talking to you, and I know you're a pastor, but like, could you help me minus the Jesus? And you know, you know what I tell them? I literally tell them, which some people might say, that's blasphemy, Pastor Brian. I was like, you gotta understand, I know the journey.
Right.
Like, I understand the journey.
Right.
I'll be like, sure, I can.
Cool. Yeah.
Like, I can. I can tell you. I can help you minus the Jesus. I said, and so then, of course, now they're like, what do you mean? I was like, but one thing I can't help you with is you're never going to live a life of peace until you have a single source of truth.
Fact.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't understand is the reason why you feel so uneasy is everything is written with intention.
Right.
And so if you are borrowing sources of truth to try to find a single truth, you're not going to find peace because everybody wrote with intention.
Yeah.
That's right.
The reason why I selected my single source of truth as the Bible, because it tells me that the intention of it was written for I can have a rich and satisfying life.
Right.
I was like, so with that, this is my single source. I can help you, but eventually you're going to make a decision to choose a single source of truth.
Yeah.
Until you do, your life will be uneasy.
Yeah.
100%.
And so I'm going to share from here, you know, and that really helps people to really realize, like, you know what? You're right. I may not get the Jesus piece, but I do understand that my life will not be a life of peace until I select a single source.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I tell them this: how many people have you had a conversation with that tell you their intention about what they wrote?
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're reading their book, but did you get a chance to ask them why they wrote it?
Right.
What's the purpose?
Yeah.
So then I start eliminating all the other sources that they have. Because I can tell you why this one was written.
Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you the intent behind every word that's here.
Absolutely.
And then when they ask the questions about, well, people come with heavy stuff. They'll be like, well, how could a good God send, babies that you didn't confess it, so you didn't say it? I says, listen, let me tell you something about this book. We remain silent about the things it's silent about and loud about the things it's loud about. When people are loud about what the Bible is silent about,
come on.
you stay away.
Right.
I said, the Bible is not loud about that.
Right.
So I'm not going to be loud.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't be loud. Nobody should be loud. Concerning all these other things that people try to use to discredit the Bible.
Yeah.
I said, but I could tell you what it is extremely loud about. That he loved us before we first loved him.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's loud about. And take that and realize there must be a single source.
Right.
Yeah.
And as fathers, I think that's one of the things we could like display. It's like at the end of the day, and that's what I love about what you said, because that's what I heard. You know what, Mackenzie? I get there's lots of information, but there's a single source.
There's a single source. Yeah.
And life will never be at peace. You'll never be at peace as long as you're borrowing from multiple sources.
Absolutely.
Because guess what? They changed them history books.
Oh yeah.
They do.
They changed them right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're actually trying. Let me not get there. I was looking at the time. I was finna go across the border.
I think you need to work.
But they're
through that
getting,
one.
but they're getting sooner and sooner. Like, they're getting quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
Amber came home, and I'm thinking in my mind, and I remember I came and I asked you about it because Pastor Mara is an incredible educator.
Sure.
She came home and she was asking about. Man, is this gonna get me in trouble? I don't know. Who cares? But she was asking about Mount Rushmore and the men who were on Mount Rushmore, and how did they get on the mountain, and what made them so important? She's asking me these questions from kindergarten, and I went to Pastor Mark. I was like, I thought that they didn't talk about this until they got to like second grade,
Right.
Third grade.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Like, I'm preparing to have a conversation with her, that is far more balanced than I believe the conversation I received.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it's coming to second grade. She's in kindergarten. Wow. I'm like, they done scooted this thing up. Like, they done scooted it right up. Like, we going to indoctrinate these kids
At kindergarten.
in kindergarten.
No, 100%.
crazy.
But I think that's a valid.
I was like,
point.
it's 2022. I thought we already discredited a whole bunch of this. But y'all still rocking with it,
Listen, this is so important to remember, though, is that while the children may not have life experience to go along with this information, in other words, their maturity doesn't match it.
It's not there,
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have to talk about it.
Right.
Because to that end, we're getting faced with a ton more
Let
questions.
me just say this. I didn't say this because it's a list.
Yeah.
Aaron was like, these are our forefathers. I was like, ain't none of these your daddy. Ain't none of these men. Ain't none of these men.
Not now one of them.
Not none of these men your
Not
daddy.
now. Not now
one
one
of
of
them. Father. I can tell you who your father is.
Come on now. But it's real though. Because they're coming with these questions because they're getting presented with information.
Right.
And now you're having to answer questions that, to your point, I mean, as my children have gotten older, I keep going, yo, why is this happening so fast?
Yeah.
Like, I was ready for this down there.
Right.
I wasn't ready for this today.
Yeah.
But now I got to deal with it today. Thank God the Holy Spirit resides on the inside. And he starts to give you answers to stuff you didn't even know you were going to have to answer. And quite frankly, had you asked me before now, I probably wouldn't have had the same answer.
That's right.
But because he was available when I needed him for what it was, okay, here's what I'm going to deliver. And you're looking there going, okay, I don't know that that's going to work at your house.
Right.
But I can tell you this.
Sure.
You get the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely.
And he'll give you an answer for what's relevant in your home.
Right.
Because, if we're not careful, we're going to out stuff sometimes that isn't even relevant to the people we're talking to. And now they're trying to face issues, concerns, problems. My mother's thing is often she'll say, don't you remember what you were thinking such and such and such? Like, I don't remember what I was thinking. But I try my best, go back, relive some of this stuff.
Right.
But more than that, I try to think about what pushed against my thought processes and what that meant to me and what that now means. So when I'm talking to my children, we can get to a place.
Right.
because awkward conversations, tough conversations are sometimes, or not sometimes, they're always necessary.
Right.
You know, oftentimes people think their quiet children are the best children, when in reality they don't even know what's going on with their children.
That's a fact.
You know, you show up and it's like, my kid would never, and it's like everybody else around them.
Right.
It's like, no, it's exactly who your kid is.
Yeah.
Like, you the only one that
didn't
don't
say-
think that's who your kid
Right.
is. As Frank Murphy would say, put on your real ID, right?
Right.
Right.
Everywhere you are, though.
Yeah.
Not like,
Yeah.
let's excuse this fake ID for a while,
Yeah.
because that's the one you hand out at home.
Right.
Everywhere else, people are like, nah, they don't look like this. They don't talk like this. They don't think like this. And you're like, yo. And as a result, you're not appropriately engaging with your child.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, I know I was one of those people early on, thought to myself, hey, man, I want my kids to just have these open conversations.
Right.
And then I realized I would be grateful that you would be willing to talk to people
Right. Yeah.
that are willing to have these open conversations. Because some of these conversations I don't want to have.
I don't want to talk about that.
But, I mean, this
That's
is
honest. That's good.
like, no, as my children have gotten older, it's gotten awesome to watch their uncles and their grandmother and the other relationships, their godparents and all, be able to impart things that, unfortunately or fortunately, they don't want to receive at home for whatever the reasons are. Like, I don't wear it on my shoulder. You ain't want it from me. Well, no, I don't care. I just care that you got it.
That you got it.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so those additional influences are critically important.
Absolutely.
And the only thing I'm asking you to do is come home and let's talk a little bit about it, right? Or at least make sure that those relationships are valuable enough that we're all talking. I mean, Brian was doing something the other day, and he said, hey, man, I just want to make sure that we're not missing a point, right?
Sure.
No, these are only things that are super valuable in this season, right? We're going to add that on top of what you're already thinking and walking through. But now the community at large is helping to move things forward positively. You know, and
That's good. That's good.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of meat left on this bone. There's always a lot to talk
Will
about
always
when you talk about dads and families. And we'll get to it eventually, right? As long as we got time. Till Jesus come back.
There you go.
Working on
there you go.
to
We're
it.
going to be here.
But
Big
today
win.
is Thursday. Today is Thursday.
Thursday.
And as you go through this day, we want you to know that God loves you. We love you. Keep attending and keep being most blessed. We'll see you soon.